What's going on, Seahawk fans? Welcome into another edition of Seattle Seahawks Today, powered by Chat Sports. Tyler Jones here with you. Appreciate you joining us. On today's show, we will be examining my projections for the Seahawks 53-man roster as we gear up for all this offseason training and conditioning and training camp. I'm going to go ahead and lay it out there, how I think this roster will look when the season begins on week one of the regular season. But before we get further with today's show, I want to make sure that you like today's video if you want some more content here. We're doing what we can to bring you all sorts of Seahawks coverage, whether it's news and rumors, trades, free agency, but we can do more. But the only way that we can do that is if you like this video and make it clear that you want us to bring you more coverage here on Seahawks Today. So if you do that, we'll be in great shape going forward. So like the video if you want more Seahawks coverage here on the channel. So let's start out with the quarterback position. I think you're only going to keep two quarterbacks on the 53-man roster, but that doesn't mean that there's not a spot for Jacob Eason with the Seahawks here. I think Drew Lock and Geno Smith right now are your two quarterbacks that get activated on the 53. Jacob Eason stays around to be on the practice squad for the Seahawks. And if there were an injury to Lock or Geno, either one, then Jacob Eason would be activated to the 53. But that's how I see things shaping out for the 53-man roster when it comes to that quarterback position. It starts to get interesting when you talk about the running backs for the Seahawks. And I also include Nick Bellore, the fullback, in this equation as well. I think that Penny, Walker, and Dallas all make it in, as well as Nick Bellore at the fullback spot. But then, as far as who doesn't make the cut, I know this isn't going to make some folks happy, but I think Chris Carson at the end of the day is going to be one of the cuts that does not make the final 53-man roster for the Seahawks. With the money that they can save from cutting him, coming off an injury, knowing that you've drafted a really good running back in Kenneth Walker III and you bring Rashad Penny back as well, I don't think that there's a need for Chris Carson anymore. So I have him getting cut along with Josh Johnson and not making the 53-man roster at the end of the day. Want to hear from you guys in the comments section. Our pinned comment today: will the Seahawks keep Chris Carson? Type Y for yes, type in for no if you think the Seahawks will hold on to Chris Carson, if he'll be back in 2022. And while the ad is playing, take advantage of it and get your votes in. Y for yes, in for no if the Seahawks will keep Chris Carson. All right, let's go to the wide receiver position now. And I have on my list 5 wide receivers that make the 53-man. Obviously, Lockett and Metcalf, that's easy. D. Eskridge as well makes it. Freddie Swain. And then I have Bo Melton, the 7th-round wide receiver that the Seahawks took as getting on the roster. Derek Young, who was also picked in the 7th round. He's more of a project than I think Melton is. Obviously, they both are to an extent as 7th-round wide receivers, but I think Bo Melton is more likely to make that 53-man right now than Derek Young. Young goes to the practice squad. Ultimately, I have Penny Hart and Cody Thompson both missing at the end of the day. The tight end position, Noah Fant, you gave him the 5th-year option. You believe in him. Obviously, you're going to keep him. Will Dissly, they already renegotiated his contract. He'll be back as well. And I got Colby Parkinson also making it with Tyler Marby getting the cut from the Seahawks there. So 3 tight ends make the 53. Rounding out the offense, let's look at the offensive line now. Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas, your 2 draft picks of tackles in the first 3 rounds. Obviously, they make it. Jake Karan, Stone, Damian, Austin Blythe, Phil Haynes, Kyle Fuller. I have all those guys making it. The surprise of this group here, I think for most people, will be Shamarius Gilmore. And if you recall, we did a video a couple days ago here on the channel talking about Gilmore, of what he brings to the table from Georgia State. Undrafted free agent, and the Seahawks would probably need him to play center to an extent as well, besides his natural position of guard, even though he never played that before. I like Gilmore's potential despite being an undrafted free agent. Gabe Jackson, although a talented player in his own right, there is enough money that can be saved from cutting him as a post-June 1 cut that I see the Seahawks taking advantage of having that money and getting rid of Gabe Jackson at the end of the day once those June 1 cuts come around. So those are my 9 offensive linemen I have for the Seahawks making the roster at this point. We'll get to the other side, the defense here, in just a second. But before we do, drop me a comment. Grade the offense of the Seahawks in 2022. What do you think of this group that Pete Carroll and John Schneider has put together for this season? Let me know in the comments section. Type A, B, C, D, or F on the grade that you would give the Seahawks offense for this year. Moving on to the defense now. Let's start out with the edge rushers and the outside linebackers. Darrell Taylor, Uchenna Nwosu, who they brought in, of course, this offseason. Boy Mafe, their second-round pick. Alton Robinson, all easy calls for those guys to make the roster. Then it starts to get interesting with the next few names. Tyreek Smith, I think he gets in. But I don't have Aaron or Joshua here making it at the end of the day either. I think those guys ultimately get cut and are on the way out and don't make that roster for those edge and outside linebacker spots. More defensive players to get to here in just a moment here on Seahawks Today. But before we do, we are presented by our friends at Fanatics, and they have some great apparel for you that you need to get your hands on right now before football season starts. You want a T-shirt and a long sleeve? Well, good news. They got a combination for you. You can get the two of them together for over 25% off. And the only way you can do that is by going to chatsports.com/Seahawks combo to get yours today. You can see they got the awesome throwback set right there to the Seahawks AFC days. So you can be styling and profiling. Chatsports.com/Seahawks combo for over 25% off. Let's move to the defensive ends now. Shelby Harris I have in, as well as Quentin Jefferson and Jarrett Hewitt I have making it. LJ Collier. The Seahawks were real high on him just a few years ago, if you remember, and the Seahawks ultimately opted to not give him his fifth-year option, and he's hoping to just make the roster at this point, which is disappointing for a guy this far in his career. He's dealt with injury issues. I would think that the Seahawks are done with LJ Collier. They'll try to trade him if they can, try to get something out of him, but I can't imagine them getting too much for LJ Collier at this point. I think the most likely scenario is that he gets cut. The defensive tackles, Poona Ford, Al Woods, Brian Moan, those guys make it in. I have Miles Adams and Matt Godel there on the way out for the Seahawks getting cut at the end of the day there. I think the Seahawks roll with 3 defensive tackles on their active 53-man roster. More names to get to in just a bit, but I want to hear from you guys. How would you rate the Seahawks defense? If you had to put a number on it, 1 through 100, how would you rate this Seahawks defense entering 2022? Let me know in the comments section. Type 1 through 100 how you would rate the Seahawks defense. Let's go to the linebacking core. Jordan Brooks obviously going to be leading the way for the Seahawks defense this year as he takes the role that was once held there by Bobby Wagner. He is now the leader of that linebacking core. Cody Barton is going to be a starting full-time linebacker playing alongside him as well. The surprise here, I think, for folks is Vi Jones. And I talked about him in our undrafted free agent video earlier this week as well. And with Vi Jones, comes from a football family, got a lot of good pedigree. I like what he was able to put together in college at NC State. And with how cheap he would be in cutting Ben Burr, saving some money against the cap there, I think that's an opportunity that the Seahawks could like to have him make the roster as an undrafted free agent here on this Seahawks roster. But for me, that's one I watch for, Ben Burr on the way out. The cornerback spots, Trey Brown, Sidney Jones, Justin Coleman, and Kobe Bryant are the first 4 that I have making the Seahawks roster at this point in time. And all eyes are going to be on Kobe Bryant, right? That guy, as a rookie, their 4th-round pick, I think is going to be somebody that sees playing time pretty fast. Artie Burns is going to be borderline. It's going to be certainly close on him. Remember that they signed him this offseason, 1-year contract, but I don't think they'd give him that deal if they didn't have the expectation that they were going to use him this year. He might not be around long this season, but I do think he'll be there at least week 1. Tariq Woolen, who the Seahawks brought in with one of their late-round picks from UTSA, they have a lot of hype about him, but he is a project player. He is a former wide receiver. He's still learning the position. He'll be a practice squad player, I think. I don't think he's on the active 53. John Reed, I have ultimately getting cut and not making the team. So those are the cornerback spots. We will get to special teams in just a moment. But before we do, I want to hear from you guys. I want you to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We are bringing you Seahawks content each and every day. YouTube.com/SeahawksTV. We are getting so close to 27,000 subscribers. And as promised, you guys asked for it. I will do it. When we get to 30,000 subscribers, I'll do a Gatorade bath. As you have asked me to do so, I'll even let you pick the color out. Probably going to be, I would imagine, a Seahawk color of sorts. But let's get there first. Let's get to 27,000 subscribers. Subscribe now. YouTube.com/SeahawksTV. Tell all your friends. Make sure they're subscribed and their friends are subscribed so we can keep building this channel and bring you more content here on Seahawks Today. The safety positions. Jamal Adams, Quantre Diggs, obviously they're in. Ryan Neal and Marquise Blair I have in. But here's my big surprise. Another undrafted free agent I have here. Bubba Bolden from Miami. Bubba Bolden, there's no reason why he should not have been picked in this year's NFL draft. The talent was there. He should have been picked by somebody. I had him as about a fifth-round grade, and he ended up slipping out of the entire draft altogether. Now, granted, there were some injury issues and such, but I do like his potential, Bubba Bolden does, and I think that he gets one of those last safety spots in ultimately and leaving the final two out there. So the special teams guys, granted, I would not bring back Jason Myers personally. If it were up to me, I would cut him, save some money, go get a cheaper kicker because I didn't like the results from Jason Myers last year. But with that said, all signs kind of point to that Pete Carroll and John Schneider are going to go ahead and just roll with the special teams unit as is, with Myers and Dicker the kicker and Tyler Ott as the long snapper, that they'll go with those guys. So there you have it. That is my official 53-man roster. I am not a math guy, but I was able to count up that there were 53 guys there that made this list. We were able to put that together. So glad that we could do that for you. Probably going to be wrong on a couple of them because that's how things go sometimes, and that's the way the cookie crumbles, as they say. But before we go, who do you think will make this Seahawks roster? Who's a name of somebody, folks, that you think will make it that's kind of borderline? Maybe we didn't have them making it. Maybe you feel like somebody that we mentioned will make it. Tell me in the comment section. Give me one name who you think from the Seahawks' current roster will make the 53-man when it's all said and done.